when I was looking into this, I kind of got on this sort of YouTube wormhole of looking into Nigeria and Lagos and what it was like. It's a pretty interesting place from what I can understand. There's like 25 million people, largest economy in Africa. So it's a hell of a city. But I would maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it's like there at the moment. Tell us a bit about the population, the culture, so we can appreciate sort of where you are and where you're doing business.
Absolutely. So a quick way to explain this is just thinking that Lagos is the New York of Africa in a sense. Obviously, Africa is a whole continent, but in terms of the pace, in terms of the hustle and bustle, in terms of the nature of people as well. People often say if you can make it in Lagos, Nigeria, you can make it anywhere in the world. So it's very densely populated, right? So you touched on that already, where we have probably over 25 million people, and we still keep getting an influx of people every single day from other parts of the country, for different reasons, because it's a commercial hub. It's also probably still the wealthiest per capita state in the whole of Africa, generally, especially West Africa specifically, actually. And there's a general culture of, just hustle to get what you need and do it really quickly. So there's a very fast-paced nature here in Lagos. And people here are just generally happy people, very resilient people, having to deal with many socioeconomic factors at the moment, actually. It's a bit of a tough time from an economic standpoint and from a social standpoint, but you can trust any Lagosian to still be going out on Friday evening, still singing, still dancing. So I think we're very happy-go-lucky people that are always busy. That's just like the culture. Yeah.
I heard that you've got quite a problem with inflation. There was a guy sort of had a meat stall and he was sort of explaining that, how at one point it was like 1,000 and now suddenly it's 2,000 for everything. Is that as bad now, and how do people deal with that kind of level of inflation?
I mean, it's pretty tough, right? So touching on the economic indicators, right? So inflation is a huge problem. It's more acute for food because we tend to import everything, generally speaking. So there are two pressures we're having. First is the exchange rate, which is the naira. It's sort of depreciated by about 27%, even just from last year, September. So imagine if you're buying a food item for $1. If you paid, let's say 350 naira last year, now you're paying almost 600 naira for that same item. So there's a trickle down effect, just everyone's feeling it. And then even the things that are made here, manufacturing costs have ballooned because we have a serious power problem. We always had one, but now it's more acute because the power grid has collapsed 3 times just this week. So it's been completely sort of blackout for people who don't have any alternative energy or don't have any generators. And manufacturers here completely run on diesel generators, right? And just the cost of diesel, given what's happening in Ukraine, it's gone from, let's say, 354 naira from December to 800 naira per liter. That's crazy. That's more than double, right? So yes, it's crazy. Everyone's feeling it, and I know we've had tough times before. So there's this sense of hope that we've been here before, but it sucks. It really sucks. And I think everyone's sort of just finding different pockets of joy. It's also a very religious country. So, you find people sort of holding onto faith, and also more practical things like, how do we think about the next elections coming up in 2023? And I think election turnout will probably be higher than ever before, just because everyone's completely aware that bad governance literally means generations having failures, So everyone's really cognizant of that, and just everyone's trying to make a difference in their own bubble to make things easier for, their community.
Right. So what kind of things do people do then from a leisure perspective, and again, from what I understand, there's also a lot of unemployment. I believe it's sort of plus 30% or something. So there's clearly people that are not able to go to gyms and go out and go to restaurants and stuff. But for people that do, what that would likely to be involved in fitness and that sort of stuff. What is the things that they do? Do they, is it restaurants? Do they go out to bars? Explain that sort of scene a little bit.
Yeah, so there's so many restaurants that have spurred up in the last 5-6 years. So you find that people go out to eat lots. We have bars, we have really good restaurants now. People go to the beach as well. People go to experiential sort of events. It could be the theater show, it could be, the cinema. So just typical things you find in any tropical country. The only thing is everything is pretty nascent. So even restaurants just 10 years ago, we only had sort of 3-4 options, and now we have about 40-50 options. So I think there's definitely growth from a consumer standpoint. Will always be a consumer market. And every single day, there are new things opening up in spite of what's happening in the economy. I think people just tend to really learn how to be resourceful because they just have no other choice. So yes, unemployment is high, but I think given the large population, right, even if you had just 10% of hundreds of millions of people, that's still a significant number. So there would always be a demand for sort of fun, leisure activities, especially when things feel really difficult. So, you find people traveling less because maybe they can't afford to do that anymore. So they need to stay and find local options of how to have fun or how to relax. So yeah, you find that people work out, go out to eat, go to the bars, go to the beach, go see movies, go see shows. And even those who are less privileged they'll find ways to exercise, and you'd find that joy is always sparked in the very most simple ways. It could be listening to, a really old radio on the streets, and everyone gathers around and dances. There's just always pockets of joy every time, everywhere. And that's one thing I think is special about Nigerians.
I was reading an article, and you talked about the fact that previously obesity was a sign of affluence, and it kind of reminded me of my grandmother when I was a kid. Anything she could do to fatten me up, because obviously they didn't have that, and just you're too skinny, boy, and
Yeah.
so is that something that's still there, or is that something that is kind of starting to change now?
So it's definitely still here, but it's evolving, and the awareness is way better than it was even 10 years ago. So, back in the day, if you had a pot belly, it showed, you had probably beef, chicken in your meals, and you were affluent, you could afford it. And if you're skinny, probably because you couldn't afford to eat as much, right? So that was the sort of preconception then, or misconception then. And now, apart from seeing, wealthy people who are actually advocating health and wellness, you actually find that chronic diseases and like high blood pressure rather, just hypertensive heart disorder, have made people and have forced the nation generally to just be more conscious of like their diet and their wellness. And I find that, even people who would have said, oh, you need to fatten up because you're way too skinny, they're like, oh wow, I'm actually I'm overweight now and I'm trying to slim down. So I think having role models who are sort of important in the country, and having social media, which has connected us even better to the rest of the world, has opened up better role models for people that just didn't even have the awareness before about maintaining a healthy weight.
So in terms of the health and fitness sector then, what does that look like, I guess, in Nigeria, probably in the broader market, and then specifically in Lagos? Is there much competition? What would you see in terms of a typical fitness facility offering at the moment, particularly in relation to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we have a couple of gyms, but super, super basic, where if you thought about the UK, you have so many options. You have a huge range from like full-fledged gym to, boutique fitness, where you have a boxing studio, cycle studio. But in Nigeria, we tend to just have basic gyms where people even tend to go to hotels to work out, right? So in terms of quantity, we don't have as many. And in terms of options, we don't have that many either. So most of the gyms just focus on having equipment in the room, maybe having one or two people to just oversee things. They don't really think about a differentiated offering, a customer service perspective. It's just more, you get what you see, you work out, you go home, right? So I'd say there are only 3 brands, that are really prominent in terms of gym offering in Nigeria. And in terms of boutique fitness, I'm actually the first, probably in the whole of Africa right now, because no one is really looking closely at the fitness sector from a business standpoint. I mean, it's emerging now, but it tends to be overlooked. And you find that most people who own gyms are probably wealthy people who just want to have it and just own it, but they haven't actually paid attention to how the business is running, the operations of it, the customer service of it, the differentiating factor. So it's an afterthought. And I think there's a lot of growth to come. And, this is just the beginning. So it's actually exciting to be part of a nascent industry because there's so much more to come.
So you mentioned that you wanted to do this as an African business. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I started in Lagos, Nigeria, because it's one of the biggest markets anyway. It's my home. But generally speaking, across Africa, there's just no clear brand for fitness, right? And I really believe that if I can do this successfully in Lagos, I really can do it elsewhere. And there are many sort of metropolitan cities in Africa that are just untapped, where you have a lot of people who are exposed to boutique fitness, especially when they travel, but they come home and they have to settle for whatever they have, whatever they see there. So from a real estate point, I definitely see different studios, but then also digitally, I think slowly it won't be as quick, as maybe a UK market or a US market, because people actually love doing things in person still. And I noticed that through building Beyond. But I really think that there's an element to expand digitally as well. And the reason I say that is because, Afrobeat, which is sort of Nigerian music, like African music, has taken off so much in the last 2 years. I mean, like Beyonce brought out like an African album where it was like Black is King, right? Which is a celebration of Africa with African artists. She won a Grammy for that. We've had Nigerian artists win Grammys and Oscars, and it's so amazing to see, right? So I think everyone is loving Nigerian music. And I think it's something we are so intentional about when we're planning our programming, that music is one of the key differentiators as well, where I found that when we were renting out our bikes before we finished the studio during COVID, we actually had subscribers from the US and the UK who liked African music. So I think generally the rest of Africa also love Nigerian music, and we can really be champions of fitness and, just taking good care of yourself and making time for it across the whole of the continent.